Nope, you're not the only one. A lot of homeschooling families in Texas are currently asking the exact same question right now. Is Texas really going to pay homeschool families? And maybe an even bigger question, what's the catch? Because for some parents, this sounds exciting. For others, it sounds quite dangerous. And honestly, both reactions make sense to me, okay? So today I want to walk through what's actually happening with Texas homeschooling funding, what families need to understand before getting excited or before getting panicked, and how Christian homeschool parents should think wisely about all of this before moving forward, because this is bigger than just money. This is about freedom. It's about independence and the future of homeschooling in Texas. Welcome to Homeschool Now. I'm your host, Nita, and it's good to have you here. So first, let's simplify this. Texas lawmakers have been pushing what's called an Education Savings Account Program, or ESA, for a long time, right? Some people also call it school choice funding or homeschool vouchers. The basic idea is this. Instead of all education money staying inside the public school sphere, give some of that to homeschooling families. And, using that state funding so that homeschooling families can buy things like curriculum, educational, maybe tutoring, other resources. This is the amount is estimated to be about maybe $2,000 per student annually, though details can change depending on implementation. Now, some parents hear that and think that, will this help my family? And honestly, for many families, it could help. Homeschooling is not cheap. I've been homeschooling for a decade now. It's a lot of work. It's quite expensive. However, things like extracurricular activities, co-ops, you have to have your little science kit at all times for your middle schoolers. But so knowing that it's not cheap is important. But the most important thing is, if I take this money, is there a catch? So let's start with the positive side. Fairly and honestly, a lot of homeschool parents support these programs because they believe, if our tax dollars are already funding public school, why can't it fund my homeschooling experience, okay? That's a reasonable argument, especially because homeschooling families often still pay school taxes. They, send money to the state like everybody else. Many parents also see this as a huge opportunity for low-income families. So these are families who genuinely want to homeschool, but they just feel financially trapped. So, supporters believe creating these programs are going to help underprivileged families who are struggling, to reduce their dependence on failing public school systems and be able to have the resources needed to take care of themselves and their families and homeschool as they want to. This is not just a good versus evil conversation. It's much more nuanced and complicated than that. So it's more based on discernment. I want to talk about some of those concerns because as many veteran homeschoolers are very cautious about the government involvement. And why is that? Because oftentimes too much government involvement leads to oversight of your homeschooling experience. Will the curriculum eventually be monitored? Will testing requirements increase? Will reporting requirements be required or expanded? Will independence slowly disappear over time? Honestly, these are concerns that are not irrational. Many homeschoolers choose the lifestyle of homeschooling because they wanted educational freedom. They wanted family flexibility. They don't want centralized systems telling them what to do. It's about the long-term trajectory of homeschooling is what we're kind of talking about. And so being financially independent, or better, relying on financial institutions to support your homeschooling can be, a concern if you are trying to navigate outside the public school, private school sphere. But here's a deeper question. What kind of system are we helping to build? Here's what I personally think, and this is an important takeaway. The biggest issue is not, do I get a voucher, am I pro-voucher, anti-voucher? The deeper issue is, will we be able to be independent? That's the question. Will parents be able to continue to preserve their family's values, their cultures, their beliefs? It's not just about money or technology or curriculum. The strength of homeschooling is parents who are deeply involved in their children's formation. Will the government begin to overstep, and will it affect that? That's the question. And the real priority should be preserving and protecting families, like I said, the cultures and the traditions and the beliefs and values of your family and of your country and everything that you love. I think that's something worth thinking deeply about. I'm a Christian parent, and for other Christian families especially, wisdom and discernment is more important than emotional reactions. We don't want to step into anything blindly. So prayer is where I'm going to lean toward. That is talking to God about your situation. Does this strengthen or weaken family responsibility? Am I becoming dependent on systems, instead of building my family strongly as you told me to? Because an education system can't replace the responsibility of God, and we know that. Education system, or even the government, has been long trying to replace God. So this is a question you actually want to talk to the Creator about, talk to the Master about, talk to Jesus about, because no funding program or any program or any government or any system should dare try to step into, trying to replace God. But some other long-term and long-raising questions that we want to be careful not to ignore are, is going to position my family to continue to homeschool even beyond 1 or 2 years? Can I comfortably and honestly sustain my homeschooling experience with the current trajectory, finances, resources on my own, or do I need help? And I think, kind of coming into the conversation with the Lord, with your spouse, with trusted friends and loved ones from that angle is going to be an honest way to proceed. It's not just I'm anti-vouch and pro-vouch. It's I'm going to surround myself around people who love me, who love my, my values and my beliefs and my culture and what I preserve and what I want to preserve. And I'm also going to involve the master himself, because ultimately, we're accountable as parents for our children's overall development. I know a lot of people don't like to hear that. Like, no, I'm not accountable for little Billy Bob. Billy Bob's accountable for himself. It's like, no, mommy, you're accountable for Billy Bob, right? I'm not accountable for Jessica. Jessica's 10. She can figure it out. No, mommy, you're accountable for Jessica too, right? You're accountable, and God's going to hold you accountable, and he's going to hold us all accountable for what we do with our children, what we do with our bodies, what we do with our minds, and what we do with this decision. So it's not a cookie cutter response, right? The point of this video is that it's the complete opposite. It's you partnering with God and trusted advisors or friends or counselors, or maybe there's a pastor or a minister or someone who's beloved and who's walking faithfully with God, who hears from God, and who can communicate with you from a place of love and with the power of the Holy Spirit, what you should do in this situation, given your holistic situation, because your situation is different than your neighbors down the street. And coming into that conversation honestly is how you're able to navigate this very serious question that's on the table right now. Should I accept these funds or not? If God says accept them, then accept them, right? He knows better than us. He says accept it. If he says do not accept it, then do not accept it, and you'll be safe. He'll provide for you in another way. He'll, send a ram in the bush, and you'll be fine. Your family will be fine. No funds needed, right? So answer that honestly, and if you're able to answer it honestly, surround yourself with trusted people. Talk to God about it like he's your God or your father, because he is. I believe that conversation can happen, and I believe with all my heart that you'll get the answer that you're looking for. Thank you so much for tuning in to Homeschool Now. Again, this is your host, Nita. I will see you in the next video.